What's up, everybody? We're back for episode 4 of Unapologetically Chasing Dreams. It's me with this guy right here, and we're back with another episode. We're really excited. We finally received contracts on a big project that we're working on, but we're not allowed to talk about it yet. So me and Jesse have been talking a lot, and I threw him under the bus with his drug addiction in episode 1. So we decided we're going to share my story of my recovery from my accident and some of the darker points of it. Wasn't all the highlights. So we're gonna get into that. It's been over 2 years, and I finally I wouldn't say I'm comfortable with sharing it, but I feel like it could help. It could help somebody.
No, I think it could. It's been, how long has it been since the accident?
2 yeyears and 2 months.
Because that was early July 2021?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because kind of to set the time, COVID had been raging, but we had found working with the events up in Wyoming, and we were doing the outdoor shows, and actually doing pretty good. And that was right after we had AVM outdoors in June, and we got rained out. And that was, it was kind of a disaster. We were there till 2 a.m. We got half the fight card done, but we'd been one of the only promotions doing shows, so we had done really good. And there was a feeling of we're on top of it, because we were doing good with the shows. We were doing good with the media company. We had a bunch of auto clients, and we had a bunch of irons in the fire. And then I remember early July, because you had been having migraines, you had something going on with your dental work near your nasal cavity or something. And I couldn't get a hold of you or Becca for a day. And then she told me that you had had an accident and had basically had a TBI or hit your head, and that you couldn't remember anything. And I was like, oh, you can't remember anything of the accident. You're like, no, he can't remember anything. I'm like, what, the past week? And she's like half his life.
Yeah.
And
it was wild. It's crazy now to look back 2 years ago, even a year ago. And I would tell myself, I'm good. Everybody would ask me how you're doing. I was like, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm completely good. And now 2 years later, I look back and I'm like, damn, I'm an optimistic person and a positive person by nature, so I kept just telling myself what I wanted to hear. We were talking about it earlier. I so desperately wanted to have freedom that I'd convinced my sister into waiting outside of my doctor's office, so that when I went in there and he did his evaluation and everything, I would come back out and she would ask me how it went, and I would lie to her. I would bullshit her and tell me that everything was rainbows and butterflies. And because I wanted more freedom, because I basically had to be watched, 24/7 for at least 6 months. I felt like I didn't have any freedom.
Well, to give it a little context, you literally went to it seemed like you had gone to bed. You didn't describe it quite like going to bed, but you were in your house in your early 20s, and then all of a sudden you wake up and you're in suburbia in a big house with 3 kids and a wife.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about it. It was, to be honest, it felt like one of those moments when you've been really fucking drunk and you wake up, but you're so drunk and buzzed that you're like, this isn't real. And that's kind of what it felt like for me. And as the days went on, and, I remember being in the hospital and the doctor being like, okay, Jeffrey, you had an accident. And I was just like, oh, I thought I was fucking dreaming, man. It was weird. But for whatever reason, the thing that haunts me the most to it still is somebody using a stapler, the staple gun. If I hear a stapler going, because it's what I vividly remember of them stapling my fucking head, and I could just feel it going.
Yeah,
and it was weird because I could feel my skin gripping. It wasn't like I was in pain. Obviously I was numbed up.
Yeah,
but I could feel the shifting of my fucking skin, the stapler grabbing it. And even now, I hear my daughter hitting that stapler going, and I'm like, oh, fuck. What the fuck is it? But yeah, it was wild, man. And in the process, I I had bruised the back of my brain severely, and I had ended up stretching 3 cranial nerves, and I didn't even know that fucking cranial nerves
I remember
existed. And you know, it was just so fucking brutal. And the recovery process of like I had a episode of TIAs, which are mini strokes.
Yeah.
And ended up in the hospital for that. And, you know, it was just like one thing after another. I couldn't fathom what was going on. And then I was like going through the recovery process or trying to my best. And, you know, to be honest, like the doctors, the first neurologist that I had just had terrible bedside manner. And he was an asshole. And I wouldn't put his name on blast, but
yeah, you guys went through, because I remember, I know you both were reluctant to go to doctors at first, and that's well understood. You and your family have been through the ringer with those, and especially in that specialist field.
Yes.
You know, I've run into it with my dad and his Parkinson's. Even with recovery, you know, when I was dealing with my addiction stuff, I don't know. There's just something about it. You have incredibly long waits.
Yes.
That are ridiculous. That I think your first appointment was slated 4 months out from the accident or something like that.
It was like, I don't remember, but it was like 90 days or whatnot, but I ended up getting in faster because of the severity of the case. But the initial neurologist I had, he had terrible bedside manner, and he was like just really negative, like, you know, and I understand he was just doing his job and giving me, you know, the facts, but I wanted to find a new one, and when I found a new one, he was amazing. He was a caretaker. He gave a shit, and you know, he walked me through like the reality of the situation and where we were and the road that we were going to be on to recovery. But
because I remember, because obviously you've come a long way since then. I feel like a lot of your memory has come back, or you know, you're pretty much back to functioning how you were. But when you first lost it, you not knowing who I was and who your kids were and everything, you see movies and you see cartoons where people bonk their heads and lose their memories, and it's kind of taken almost as a comical thing. Like, it's something I never thought about, and I think a lot of people haven't. And I mean, there were funny moments because I knew you kind of had recollections of who I was. And at first, when you were talking to me, I think it was about a week or two when we started texting, and it was kind of like, hey, this is the new kid at school. He's very shy, is how it was put to me, to be very, you know, like, don't go crazy. And it was like, hey, Jeff. And you're like, hi, it's so nice to meet you. And then you're like, please and thank you. And I'm like, who the fuck is this? I'm like, it was so weird. You were so nice, like childhood innocence nice. And it was almost like creepy. But it was cool because I got in aspects of it, because I was showing you old footage of us like doing stuff in old meetings.
Yep.
And those would like, I know like there was a bittersweet aspect to it. Like you had a lot of fun seeing those, but there's also, it was almost like there was a feeling of, you described it as like a feeling of loss, or, you know, almost depressive in a way of not being able to like, to know that happened, but it doesn't feel like you.
it was fucking weird because you'd show me stuff and I would be very like happy and proud watching it. But then I would be like, I would get about 10 minutes later, I'm like, that's not me. I didn't fucking do that. And again, just like not believing in the reality. And I tell you, it gave me a whole new world of empathy for brain injuries and people that have gone through that. My own mom, when I was 7 years old, she had a brain tumor, and it significantly changed her life.
Yeah.
You know, dramatically. But growing up, I was very angry about her behavior and stuff that she had done. And this brought me a whole new level of perspective of like, wow, like, you know, I had also had drop foot syndrome. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, it was like dragging my left leg around because I had a nerve disconnect from the brain injury. And that was, sounds dumb, but that was very hard for me, and like made me very insecure, like, because I didn't want people to see me like that. Well,
yeah, and you would, especially going by from what you could remember. So basically, you could remember parts of your life. You lost a little over or a little under half your life. Basically, at the time, you couldn't remember stuff after, what was it, 2005 or 6? Something like that. So you remember a time in your life when you were like doing weight training insanely.
Yeah.
And so to all of a sudden be not only in an older body, but to have stuff like the drop foot syndrome and things like that. Like it definitely didn't.
It just
bode
didn't
well.
feel like reality, right?
Yeah.
Like I would just like this is just not my life. And one of the crazy things is like, you know, waking up like you know in this and having this like this beautiful house and the stuff I dreamed of as a kid, but it didn't feel real because I didn't remember the process to go through it to get it or anything like that. And I remember I went through 2 neuropsychiatrists, and the first one was, you know, probably me being difficult and just not understanding, comprehending, but I got a new one. His name was Dr. Michaels, and he had told me that basically I had become a master at redirection and that I had been putting Band-Aids on bullet holes my whole life. So if a negative thought had entered my mind before, I had all these businesses and all this other shit that I could do, and now I had nothing to do except for lay in bed and recover and be in my own fucking mind. So I literally had taken up OCD on a whole new level. I was making my bed sometimes 30 to 50 times a fucking day because I would notice that it was off.
Well, it's almost like a disassociation.
Yeah.
You know, just needing to get, cause I know I can relate to that. Like idle hands and being stagnant are horrific to me.
Yeah.
You know, especially, you know, coming into a world where you don't remember a lot of it, you know, and it was just kind of weird knowing that I was a stranger to you in aspects.
Yeah.
And I knew there was a familiarity. Like the process of you recalling stuff gradually was also, it was just kind of fascinating because you would remember stuff that I didn't even remember.
It was like a sense of touch too.
Yeah.
Of like somebody would come up and give me a hug and I would be like, that felt familiar. I remember this time or a smell. I would, you know, recall.
Yeah.
But it was uncomfortable. I did not, probably even 4 months down the road, I did not want to even leave the fucking house. I had terrible anxiety. I was having panic attacks, which I have to tell people I also did not believe those were fucking real.
Yeah.
Until I went through it. But I remember going to the store for the first time, and I thought everybody in the store was like looking at me because I fucking was walking weird, and like it's crazy what the mind does.
Yeah, you think all eyes are on you because
Yes.
you didn't come out. You know, I remember coming over to the house a couple of times, but yeah, you wouldn't go out much.
No.
I don't blame you at all. Like
Everything was doctor's appointments and neurological rehabilitation therapy, you know, and things like that. But when I look back now, like we were discussing the first neurologist, like he probably wasn't even that bad, but
Yeah.
I was out of my fucking mind. And so I thought he was bad, but I mean, he was delivering news to me that maybe was the reality in the majority of the cases he's seen. Basically my level of injury, he told me he had seen five different results, and one of them included death.
yeah.
Somebody had the same injuries as me, but they died. 2 other people never walked straight again. Somebody else took their life. You know, like there was just a lot of it was all negative.
Yeah.
It was all negative. And so I remember when he told me that I wasn't going to probably ever walk straight again, and that like my memory would not recover. And this was like the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And I just said, all due respect, you don't know who the fuck I am, and I'll find a new doctor and I will do these things. And, you know, my new neurologist was just empathetic.
Yeah.
He is a caregiver on every level. Like he cares, he gives a shit. He doesn't sugarcoat it and tell me what I want to hear, but he says, look, anything's possible. We can do these things. And then, you know, it was probably a number of people from the fight community and other people that had reached out to me and told me about Dr. McWhorter.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And he runs a neurological and spinal clinic, you know, and so he does like a lot of things there. And so I was getting pretty fucking desperate, and so we reached out to him, and we went down there, and it's crazy. I was just talking to him the other day. It's like, man, that was such a big part in saving my life. Like in the moment, I didn't realize it, but like at the time, he in about 10 weeks, I was like walking with my gait was almost fixed. Like my drop foot syndrome was so much better. You know, my everything. I was sleeping better. You know, they did neurofeedback and gyrostim, and I don't remember what it was, like that red light therapy. You came
Oh yeah,
in,
yeah,
remember?
yeah. You had, it was kind of like a game of memory.
Yeah.
Where you'd see a light, you'd have to hit it.
And you're solving math problems along the way. But he was such a big part of it. And then, I went to another place called Therapy Without Walls, and that's where I did my speech therapy. So my speech was affected, but not, most people probably wouldn't have noticed it, but I noticed it.
Yeah.
And there would be like a little bit of a lisp, in there, or like slurred words.
Yep.
Slurred words of more where it was. But, it's crazy. Like I was telling you, looking back now, 2 years later, I can look back on the situation clearly.
Yeah.
And I could be like, holy shit. Like, I don't know what I was thinking at times. Like, just thinking like all the doctors were wrong. Even the doctors I love, they were wrong. And I knew better.
Yeah.
And they were full of shit. And everybody was against me. But that's, that's the problem with your brain when things are not going right.
No, I mean, especially for someone like you, I feeling caged up like that and people giving you such bad news.
Yeah.
That, it's almost, there's a, the test to it you really can't do is if you would have just accepted it and maybe just given into failure. I mean, what would have come of that? Like when I was going through my addiction recovery and all that stuff, I'd meet any number of people that would say like, it's just never going to happen, including the voices in my own head. Yeah. But there's a part of you that wants to, oh yeah, I'll show you that challenge.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, because I remember there were a lot of dark days, and it was a lot of moments of where you would hear good news and you get really optimistic about it, but then there'd be a big wall you'd hit.
Yeah.
And it was like just devastating. And I know it's looking back, it's not that long a period of time, in the big scheme of things, but the 6 months or whatever you were going through all like the hard part, it was just like, it definitely, that's probably one like, and just as the business goes, like that was one of the longest, periods of time, just hoping that you were okay and that you were going to get through it. Cause some of the news is just like, I don't know how I would have reacted to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it is that, I haven't talked about it a lot outside of our close circle.
Yeah.
That knows, like basically me, you, Becca, and a few other people that are close in our circle. And it was, people are always like, man, you're kicking ass. Like you got back up on that horse and you did that. And I'm like, I did, but I also want to share the story for anybody out there that might be struggling, how close this all came to ending.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. I was going we were in that mix of the 6 months, and it was like 2 steps forward, 5 steps backward in recovery because something would happen, or I'd wake up from a nap and I had the stroke, the strokes, the 3 mini strokes, and I just remember I didn't have a lot of empathy for people that said they wanted to kill themselves, because I'm like, you could either fix it if you want or not. And I'll never forget, my sister was coming over to our house because she was going to pick up she was going to pick up the girls, because they've always gone to my parents' house on the weekend. And I went downstairs to grab something, and I was like looking around, and it just hit me. I was like, I'm fucking hanging myself tonight.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I knew it was wrong, and I couldn't tell you why I had the thought. And then later that day, I went upstairs and I went out in the garage, and I was like, I'm going to hang myself in here. And I texted my doctor immediately, and I was like, hey, I'm having suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
And he's just, he's like, talk to me, what's going on? And I, I'm telling him, I'm like, man, I just feel like I'm never going to get back to who I was. And I don't even know who the fuck I am at this point. Like, I don't know who I was.
Yeah.
Like I looked at pictures and videos and all these things, but I was like having an identity crisis. Is like, I didn't know who I was. And like we talked about it, I was just trying to find my way home.
Yeah.
And those voices in your head will tell you that you're never coming back, that you're fucking worthless, and that you are better, that everybody's better off with you not here. And so, I messaged him and he would just like, he did the doctor thing, and, he was just like, well, let's get you on some antidepressants. And I'm like, I don't want antidepressants. I don't want medication. Well, I really want you to try taking these.
Yeah.
Okay, so he gives me a prescription. It was for Prozac. And to be honest, I was just flushing them down the toilet because I did not want to take them.
Yeah.
And whether that was the right decision or not, I can't tell you. So it's getting progressively worse.
Yeah.
It's getting worse. And at this point, you know, my sister is helping out a lot with the girls because we're trying to shield them from the severity of the situation in general.
Yeah.
But they know, I mean, they're young, but they know that I was injured and that things are not going very well. And I texted him again and I said, this is, I'm in a bad place. I essentially asked my sister to take the girls for, I don't know, a week or whatnot, and I ran away, and I found myself in a hotel room in Westminster. And my whole purpose of going to that hotel room was that I was going to hang myself, and I didn't want anybody to have to find me at home.
Yeah.
And I have not always been a very spiritual person. So, like many people out there, I would pray to God when I got in trouble and I needed to get out of it, or I really needed something to happen. I would pray, and that was it. But growing up, I really didn't believe in God because of the fucked up shit that I went through, or I saw in my own house and in my childhood. I was like, hey, if there's a God, this is not a real thing.
Yeah.
You know, he wouldn't let this happen. And I literally was in this hotel room, and I took off my belt and I tied it around the clothing rack. And I thought to myself, this is it. And I can't tell you why, but I looked down and I opened this drawer. This Bible right here was right there. And I grabbed it and I just fell down to the ground and I started crying. And I said, God, please save me. Please help me any way that you can. And I've never read the Bible in my life. Never had been really religious, like you said. And so I started to, just read it. I felt like I had completely lost myself and I didn't know what else to do. And people were worried about me because the people that care about me did not know where I was.
Yeah.
And I texted my doctor again and I told him the severity of the situation. And I told him I'm in a hotel room. And so he didn't have to do this, and I'll leave his name out of it because there's rules and things and patient interaction. But he had somebody come help me, and I got my first experience with psilocybin.
Oh yeah,
which, for those of you that don't know, magic mushrooms. And while I was recovering, do you remember everybody kept saying, oh, try this. But I was like nervous because I only remember mushrooms from when we were in high school. And you would take a little dose with some orange juice and you would trip your balls off and have a great time.
That's taking it to party, not the medical amount. And
right.
I think it's a little,
But I wasn't comprehending shit, so I didn't understand it. And then, we had lunch that one day with another friend in the production world, and he's just like, told us a story of his friend that fell off of a second floor.
Yep.
And, his head had a head injury and started taking it. And when he told us, and then you told me that it has been brought up in your dad's therapy before.
Yep.
I started taking it serious, and I was fucking desperate, bro. I was eating 400 calories a day. I was like losing tons of weight because I was lost. So he comes to my hotel room. He gets me a microdose is what it's called. And 15 minutes later, I shit you not, I was talking to this guy like he was my best friend, and I was the happiest I'd ever been in my life, which is not true, but I felt that way. We went to the steakhouse behind. We had this amazing fucking steak dinner, and I'm like, there you go. I'm telling myself that I'm fixed because that's how I felt. Yeah. So he tells me, look, I know that you feel like this is the greatest thing that's ever happened, but you were in such the fucking shitter that is not the case. And he went to medical school with another doctor that had a bicycle accident up here in Boulder about 6 years ago, and he suffered a TBI as well. And this shit flipped his life upside down. And for 2 years, they went through medication and everything else that you could ever fucking imagine. And then finally, they flew him to Miami, Florida, and he got psilocybin, and it changed his life. And so from that day forward, things started to get a hell of a lot better for me. Because it was just like every day I would get a little bit more. And I got these really good friends of mine, Carisha and Gil, and they're okay with me sharing their name because they were able to get me the psilocybin that I needed to fucking exist and stay alive. And it was crazy because it was just like, it changed everything. My mental focus, my emotional focus, my happiness. Like that's really where things started to turn for me. And then, you know, my new neurologist, the new neuropsychiatrist, and then also doing the neurological rehabilitation at McWhorter's.
Yeah.
You know, the hyperbaric chamber treatment, all that stuff. Slowly, everything started to turn. But, you know, it's one of those things where, like, you know, when somebody takes their life, everybody's like shocked or thinks, oh, you know, this guy was a happy guy and everything like that. I mean, I was fucking steps away from it.
Yeah.
And all I had to do was reach out for help.
Yeah.
And help came. And so if I'm that resource for whoever's watching this and I can help you, then message me.
And that's a lot of what it is. I think a lot of guys, a lot of people have been at that point. And, you know I have in throes of addiction and other times in my life. You know, the two reasons most people, I think about suicide, it seems, is it might be a way to fantasize in a dark way about how you impact people, and that in most times should shake people out of that.
Yeah.
But the other time is you're hurting that bad, you want it to end. And I think, you know, I've been there. I know you were there a lot during your recovery.
Yep.
And I think that's a big difference between those of us who can sit here and talk about it and be resources for other people and help other people, is you gotta ask for help. And it's fucking hard when you're there, because you may not, you know, it not only just to ask for help, but it can be embarrassing. You know, you might feel like you're doing, you know, oh, this is just weak. I mean, everybody gets to those low points. And I think there's always people, even if you don't know people very well, there's people and resources there. Like, we'll throw up the hotline here, but there's a lot of resources to help people with suicide and suicidal thoughts.
Man, well, I mean, for me, I didn't want to tell anybody I knew. Yeah. Because nobody knew where I was. So I was like trying to like lessen the burden. And so I didn't want to reach out to anybody that I thought would tell everybody where I was. You know what I mean? You just go through all these scenarios in your fucking head. And what I could tell you is that people that honestly, like even now, like I didn't really remember knowing a lot of people. You know, one of my best friends in the whole world, Jeremy, was there with me daily at the hotel. And he never left my side, but he's been like that since we were kids. Yeah. But it was one of those things where a lot of the people that stepped up to help me and were there, I really didn't fucking know them. They were just good people. Now we're really close. You know, I had other people that have experienced something similar. They've gone through a brain injury or whatever, and they had really been there for me in a big way. Yeah. And it was just wild, man. I mean, to look back and think like it's been 2 years, and like I said, you know, so many people have seen like the recovery and all the good things, but I feel like it's really fucking important to share this part of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing a lot of people don't see and people don't share, because it's not something that you really want to dwell on. And you don't, I don't know. That's when I talk about my story and when I'm retelling years, I'll leave that part out. The really dark points, because it can be, it's assumed that there's some bad times there, but it is important to talk about the struggle.
It is, you know, and I've always been open about our struggle in entrepreneurship and everything like that. But even the whole way to the studio tonight, I was fucking having anxiety because I didn't want to share it. I don't want people to know this, but then I'm like, I have to be real. I have to let people, somebody out there is going through what I went through. And if they're not right now, they may be in the future. Yeah. You know, and it was just, it was crazy. It completely, you know, it changed my life. And I mean, the way that I found this Bible, and, you know, it came to I don't push God on anybody. I do it for myself. Yeah. But ironically, one of the craziest things that I remember from recovery is Penelope, my baby daughter, would always come and she would hold my hand and she would be like, "Dear God, please help my daddy." And that was like, it still chokes me up because I'm like, I never taught her that, you know? Yeah. And I remember when things were really dark and you know, one of the the doctor that I didn't care for very much told me that, you know, I should make sure that my affairs are in order. And if there's letters that I need to write, then I need to do it. And so I wrote those letters to each one of my daughters. And, man, I still have them. To be honest with you, haven't had the courage to reread them since I wrote them, but I specifically remember, you know, parts of it.
Yeah. When you wrote those, how familiar were you with your daughters? Because I know that was an experience in itself for you.
You know,
like learning to remember them.
Pictures and videos were everything for me. They saved my
Yeah, and you document a lot.
They saved my life. I document a lot of the girls. I have literally everything from doctor's appointments to when they were born, their first steps. I mean, I've seen everything.
Yeah.
So I'm in, you know, I think I'm in a place now where I can go back and read those because I want, like, for myself, I want to understand how far I've come. But you know, for them, you know, recently, and the nerves of sharing this story, like, you know, I've always been my daughter's, their Superman, their superhero, their Batman. And so my biggest fear was, like, they saw me fall down in a terrible way, and they saw me in a terrible position.
Yeah.
But I also know that they saw me get up, and they saw me fight to get back to where I needed to be.
Yeah.
And that goes, that's just the reality of life. Nobody in this life goes through a life unscathed. And if they have, they're extremely, extremely blessed. But, like, I've met so many people along this journey that I'm just like, fuck. Like, I thought I went through some shit, and then I met a guy a few weeks ago that I would just, like, I literally, after talking to this guy, got in my truck and I fucking cried for 30 seconds for the story that he told me, just thinking, like, that could have been, you think your story's bad? Like, it could always be a whole hell of a lot worse.
Keeping it in perspective. I mean, that doesn't mean, you know, what you're going through isn't important and isn't bad. You know, it's just, it helps you with a little bit of grounding and some gratitude, because that guy whose story is worse, there's somebody with a worse story than him.
Yeah.
You know,
and he was positive, though. It wasn't like, he was just like, oh, you know, life happens, and, you know, it just blew me away.
Yeah.
And I would just, like, his attitude and his gratitude for where it was. And then, you know, we got through those very dark 6 months. And then the psilocybin, you know, me finding a relationship with God for myself started to turn things for me. And then, you know, last summer, I'm feeling like, man, I remember very specifically, I was in the shower one day, I was listening to music, and I just found myself singing along, as funny as it sounds. I'm like, I'm just really happy in my life.
Oh, I remember you calling me about that.
Yeah. And then I was in Denmark, and I remember I woke up one morning and I had this headache, and I felt lost and confused. I just felt out of it when I was over in Europe. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. But I was scared shitless to tell my doctor, because I did not want to know anything else was wrong.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, that's past me. And then what happens in August of last year, of 2022, I end up having to have emergency surgery because I had a brain aneurysm.
Yep.
And, you know, I told, essentially, you knew, and Jessica knew.
You gave me like a 17 minutes heads up. Hey, I'm going into the operating room, have an aneurysm, may die. Like, I was like, oh, well, I guess I'll wait.
I was like, only you and Jessica know. And, you know, Jessica was scared out of her mind, and she dropped everything in her life to fly out here and take care of me, you know, but I didn't want nobody to know, again, because I'm like, man, you just run these scenarios in your fucking head. And I'm like, oh my God, like, if anybody knows, like, you know, my clients they're not going to want to support us again, because they're going to think, here we go again, we're going to be down, you know, in business for doing this. And I don't want my daughters to know, you know, that this is happening and everything. And, you know, unfortunately, we had to tell them, because I ended up in the hospital for 3 or 4 days. And then, you know, the Frankenstein scar on the side of my fucking head, that I had from that surgery. But it was, I remember, my barber is so awesome, Junior Columbus. I was like, had a hat, and I was like, all right, dude, I need to see what you could do with this. He's like, God damn, you know, but he like I tried to do this weird, like, fucking long hair comb over to like cover the scar so that nobody could see it, because wearing a hat fucking hurt.
Yeah.
And then when I got all the staples out, you know, it was like, it just looked grotesque, man. But for me, that was a setback. I was fucking, again, I was just like, man, I had made all this progress. We were killing business again. We had all these new opportunities, and then wham.
Yeah.
But ultimately what it came down to is I was not doing any of my fucking follow-ups with my doctors. I wasn't, you know, I was supposed to have follow-up MRIs and CAT scans, and they would have saw that. And I was just like, you know, I told my sister, my family, I'm like, oh, I'm completely healthy. I'm good. And boom. So like, if you're going through something like that, even if you don't want to, follow the medical care. You know what I mean? Because that could have been avoided. They could have done a process called recoiling, I think is what it's called. They go in with a balloon and they clamp it off, so it doesn't get as bad.
Yeah.
But it ended up in a worst case scenario, and because that's how I like to do things. But you know, after that, I mean, initially, I remember when I was in the hospital, I was just like, "Fuck, here we go again."
Yeah.
And I was so mad for about a day, and then I like snapped out of it, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm here. God woke me up to live another day. I'm still here for a reason and a purpose." And then I felt like after that, I was like really on my way.
Yeah.
We really got going again.
That was the change.
It was.
I mean, after that, well, I mean, those were the last 3 days that I got some relaxation. No, because it felt like things kicked up. All of a sudden, we were definitely stagnated. Most of the work we were doing for that year, it was us taking the initiative, usually at our own cost, chasing stuff that wasn't happening.
Well, it was it was balancing. I remember, I mean, we had a lot of good stuff that we had going on, but you know, me being out of it and like everybody not knowing the future of Sparta or what was going to happen, you know, it was very difficult. And so, you know, but now like to look back over 2 years later, I'm like, fuck, man, it doesn't feel like it's been that long, but you know, I'm happier than I can ever remember being. And I had several happy moments in my life, several great chapters in my life. But that adversity is just something that we turned into adventure. And now it's like, you know, just part of my past and my story. And like, I don't want to be a fucking used to be guy. I don't want to talk about the stuff we used to do. I want to talk about the new stuff that we're doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, if that year was our used to be, it's much better than it being our current, because it was such a rough year, both with
just emotionally, I think, for everybody.
It's the nails on chalkboard year in my head.
Yeah.
You know, like thinking back, because it was a roller coaster. There were points I remember going, especially in the worst of it, when you'd have days, because when it was really bad, you were having days where you could be out for a couple of days and then you'd be up. And I didn't know, I got anxiety every time my phone rang or I saw a text message from you or Becca, because I didn't know if I was getting, or your sister, because I didn't know if I was getting a message to tell me that you'd, you know, had an aneurysm and died, you had killed yourself, or, you know what? Like I spent a lot of time worrying about you, and I know all of us that knew did.
Yeah.
And it is a long period of time. It was like a month or two of that. And then, you know, we have this stuff later in the year to where it just, like you said, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back, and it's just nerve wracking, you know, and I couldn't even imagine what it was like for you going through it. You know, we don't know like what's up with the companies, what's up with your health. Like, you know, and we've just been together for so long. It's kind of like, well, I gotta, you know, he's got to pull through this, like in my head. But I was, you know, I've never been that nervous.
Yeah. I mean,
and not knowing.
I think just not knowing now, like I said, when I look back, I'm like, holy fuck, man, I was really fucked up. Like I would like, you know, I've journaled for many, many years.
Yeah.
And so like when I figured that out and I started like re-journaling again for me to go back and like look at that now, I'm like, wow, it was a dark time. But, you know, after that, I felt like we came through that. And then, you know, 2021 was, you know, by far the hardest year of all of our lives into 2022. But then 2022 came and I felt like it was just one of the best years of my life. And then, you know, and then 2023, you know, this has been just a fantastic year as well. We've, you know, had massive things happen.
Yeah, the
in
growth,
business. The growth has been.
We're back. I feel like we're back.
Yeah.
To our pre-accident days.
Well, and finding the passion too. Rediscovering the passion and who I was, and for forever, my rules have always been in life: if it doesn't light my soul on fire, then I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And that is my friendships, my relationship, and for sure business.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have rediscovered all that again. And I feel so blessed because I have such an amazing relationship and co-parenting relationship with Becca that I still see my girls every day, and we even work together in many ways, she's still at the events, or, she helps out in many things in many ways. And, Jessica's been very gracious in that whole thing, cause that can't be easy as well,
Yeah. I think, especially from the chaos of 2021 into 2022 and, during the accident and the separation and divorce and all that, you landed on your feet now, and you have you and Jessica are just an amazing couple that have really stepped up and pulled the businesses out of where it was.
She is, I can't say it enough. She is a fucking brilliant mind, as I was telling you. I mean, for those of you that don't know, Jessica worked for us 7 years ago, and then she got a massive opportunity with Facebook in California. So she was an executive assistant in Facebook, and then got recruited by LinkedIn. And so now she works as an executive assistant to executives at LinkedIn. And I'm like, she's so innovative, she's so organized, and she's been a game changer. A couple of the businesses that we've started together, I'm just like, wow. I mean, she really inspires me, and it just been good, man. And our relationship, I miss talking shit to you and busting your balls nonstop.
Hey, well, that was, going back to the initial week of talking to you, I thought I'd never say this. There is some evil thoughts that went through my mind about what should I fuck with Jeff with? Because he doesn't know anything right now. But then I was kind of missing the shit talk. It was so I was almost annoyed when you were talking nice to me. You're like, can I find this video? Because you didn't know how to operate Dropbox. You only knew how to use MySpace. You didn't even remember Facebook.
Yeah.
And it was you're asking me how to use Messenger, and you're just, how do I do this? And I'd be like, oh, you just do this. And I'd send you a picture and be really thorough on how I send you. Oh, thank you so much. And I'm just oh, who's this dick? What is this?
Yeah, dude, it's wild. Cause even today, Mike's been a part of Sparta for a long time. He's running the Switcher right now. And we're just so verbally abusive to each other, off camera, and probably some of this shit's recorded as well. And
I got my stash. One of the
new partnerships that we're entering into that's huge, unfortunately, involves human resources.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So I'm like, fuck. We're I'm so excited and giddy about about what we're doing and, we're going into, but yeah, human resources is a part of that. So, and that was a non-negotiable, and it's funny because the human resources director is such an amazing man, and he's funny, but I'm like, we're going to be having infractions, and,
I am actually looking forward to it.
Initially, just, I'm like, where the fuck's my reels? Where's my reels at, motherfucker?
I'm like, I'm feeling a lot of pressure from this gentleman over here, and it's making me feel quite uncomfortable.
It's crazy, man. But, I feel so much better, sharing this story, and there's a lot more. We only have an hour today. So, there's more stories from that horrific time period. But, it just got me thinking, somebody recently in the fight community had taken their life, and it's just not somebody I would have thought, to be honest with you. And I don't know the circumstances surrounding it, but, I would just I need to share my story. Because everybody has seen, they know it was hard and stuff, but they didn't know exactly how dark it was at times.
Yeah.
And, had my doctors not stepped up, and, Chris and her husband, Gil, I can tell you I probably wouldn't be here, because it was fucking getting to that point.
Yeah. I mean, you hear, I think a lot of people know somebody, if not multiple people, who have, taken that step and, gone through with it. And you sit there and you think, what could I have done, or what was going on? And, it's just, I don't know. It's, you think, what if he would have asked for help? And that's the only thing I can really think of with anybody that I know who's gone through it is, you know, as far as I know, they didn't ask, you know, me for help, and that's not faulting them. But those spots are dark, and help's not always there. You know,
Yeah,
it's hard.
You know, and people would always be like, "That's such a coward thing to do," and I'm like, they've never been there. And
Yeah.
and again, like I have been, you know, like I was one of those people where it's just like, why would somebody do that? But when you're in that situation and the fucking walls are closing in on you, and you believe that you are no good here for anybody, and that this world is better off without you.
Yep.
You know, it's tough, and it's sad that, you know, people live in that reality. And especially, you know, as men, like, you know, we grew up in a generation where, like, you know, we got our ass kicked for getting hurt as kids. And it's just like, you know, my dad'd be like, you know, don't fucking cry, sack up, you know, like sack up. But you don't talk about, you know, any of the shit that has happened or transpired in your life because it's weak.
Well, I think we were the starting point of where I think people, you know, were starting, you know, in the 70s into the 80s. People were, you know, towards the end of high school, I remember talking about therapy, and I think people were a bit more open about it, but not as open as today.
Oh, it was taboo. I mean, literally, if you were going to therapy, you were fucking insane. And what I can tell you now, looking back, is I was fucking insane. Like when I look back at moments, I'm like, I literally came up with scenarios in my head that fucking had zero grounds and zero reality. And, you know, I remember my doctor just being like, hey, when the brain's healing, you did some good damage to it. So you need to make sure that like you're healing it. But you come up with all these fucking scenarios in your head that like everybody's against you, everybody wants you dead, and they want you to just fucking die, which is not true, you know? And, it's crazy with how powerful the brain is. But psilocybin, anybody that's been on the fence about taking it, it's fucking, it saved my life. And I'm such a huge supporter of it. It passed the bill, you know, it's legal. I mean, it had been decriminalized, but we're going to see it hopefully in dispensaries and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, anybody out there, you've suffered a brain injury or you're going through depression and you don't want to take the typical stuff like I did, like, do the psilocybin. I mean, since then I've given it to 3 friends that have gone through some shit, and it's amazing. And the mental focus on it is fucking wild.
Yeah. No, I've heard nothing but good stuff about it. And I have seen it work, like with you and a couple other people I know that have taken it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's something I've considered, but I mean, I'm not at a point where I feel like I need it right now.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. I mean, I think it's probably been almost 8 or 9 months since I had taken it, because I just haven't felt like I've needed it. But it's wild, like the mental focus that it gives you. Like I remember going into neurological rehabilitation and microdosing before, and so I was only getting 1 to 2 math problems correct when we were doing the red green light. I think you were there that day. And I started taking it and I was like, boom, boom, boom. I was just clicking like 10 for 10. And he was just like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I'm microdosing. I mean, it slows everything down so I could process. And then I became obsessed with like reading books and stuff on it and everything. And I had read like a lot of very high level executives, like even Larry Page, they do these retreats and they take psilocybin to help them in the creative meetings and shit. And it's not a lie. Like that shit is like unbelievably, gives you the most unbelievable focus. Yeah. Like, you know,
no, it does a lot of good stuff. I know, it helps people with all sorts of things. Cause when they're bringing up for my dad's Parkinson's, issues. He has some other stuff going on, you know, like with his heart and blood thinners that I don't think he's allowed to take it, or they don't know enough to give it to him. And I know he's kind of bummed about that because we definitely want to get him on it if we can.
Yeah. I mean, there's no such thing as a magic pill, but I can fucking tell you that it felt like a magic pill. It was crazy. It was literally 15 fucking minutes. And I'm like thinking of hanging myself to like, oh, let's go eat. You know, and I like when I get really stressed, I don't eat. And so like, it was just like, I was eating like 300-400 calories a day. And then I was just like, man, we went to the steakhouse and we fucking ate. And I'm talking to this guy like he's my best friend and I've known him forever, which is not uncommon for me because I talk to strangers all the time. And, you know, I love talking to people. But when I look at it, I'm just like, dude, it was fucking wild. It was crazy. You know, it was crazy, but that shit is amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I'm so grateful for the people that helped me, especially Carisha and her husband. You know, she had suffered a brain injury as well, and, you know, went through some personality changes and everything. And that's the thing is, like, now when I look back, I'm like, I don't know who the fuck that was.
Yeah. No, I think, you know, psilocybin, I'm excited for it being legal in Colorado and the work they're doing with it.
Yeah.
And for the help it gave to you. Like, I had known the good effects, but I feel like, if anything, you were proof of it because it was night and day with how you were doing.
Well, it's one of those things, right? Like, do you hear this amazing, miraculous story that somebody, but like, then you try it and it never fucking works that way.
Yeah.
It never goes that way.
Well, it's like hearing about a supplement.
Yeah.
That's really good.
People kept telling me over and over. I couldn't get it out of my head. And then when it happened, I was just like, fuck. And I tell people all the time that have come to me about something similar, like in our group or whatnot, you know, and they take it. And I'm like, that shit it was crazy. It saved my life. There is so many people that I have to thank in my recovery.
Yeah.
You know, Carisha, her husband, 3 specific doctors that I had that really cared and changed the game. But, you know, Dr. McWhorter and the people that got me down there to the neurological rehabilitation clinic. I mean, if you've suffered a brain injury, and you're struggling with drop foot, you know, anything, like Dr. McWhorter is amazing. And he also too had suffered a brain injury when he was younger. He got jumped and, you know, he got messed up pretty bad. And he knows what the fuck he's doing. That's the thing. It's all business. It's all business with him. And, you know, he was a big part of getting my life back.
Yeah.
You know, like being able, like now just to go to the gym and to work out. And then, you know, I got connected with Chris Culberson and Arsenal Fitness. And, you know, I know you're doing it now, you know, the peptide program. And it's just like, man, I'm like, you know, being in my 40s and like feeling fucking amazing again and have that confidence back. And I'm like, you know, put on a shirt and be like, oh shit, it's fucking tight my arms.
It's been a while and it helped jumpstart getting back in a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
And
there's so many it's messy. For anybody out there going through something difficult, whether you're battling depression or you're coming back from an accident like I did, you had a brain injury, whatever it is, recovery is fucking messy. And I don't care what anybody says. It is going to be hard. It's going to break your heart. It's going to be a lot of dark days. But eventually you will see light. And there's just so many pieces to it, you know, like everything from, you know, the peptide program, Arsenal Fitness, to therapy, to neurological rehabilitation, to my neurologist and the neuropsych and my supportive family and friends that, you know, never left my side. Like, it was all part of it. It wasn't one specific thing, but the psilocybin was a game changer.
No, yeah. You'll have those great components of it, like you in the psilocybin or
Psilocybin.
Yes, that.
Say that 10 times.
No.
I would just call them magic mushrooms because I couldn't pronounce it.
Then it's like, okay, well, YouTube demonetized this and all that. Basically, because I mean, my recovery is still ongoing 8 years later. And, you know, but that first year, it's a lot of stuff. And, you know, there's big difference between what I went through and what you went through. You know, you didn't have a choice going into it. Yeah. And, you know, there's a lot more stories that can come out of it, but I think it's cool that you shared today.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It was fucking tough. I had anxiety about it, but I know like somebody could benefit from it. And I would just like, God, you just don't want somebody to see you at your weakest point.
No.
But I mean, the fact that like I was at my weakest point and, you know, and I came back from that, you know, was a big deal, but it's, yeah, man, it was hard for me to share, and I hope it benefits somebody out there, even if it just saves one person to see, like, you know, sometimes people get caught up in what they see public glory, but not the private struggle.
Yeah.
You know, and that we've both experienced that. People think that, you know, we live this glamorous life, and a lot of it is fucking torture behind the scenes. And, you know, but I say 99% of it is I create our own storms and then we have to dance in the rain. But I miss the chaos. It sounds fucked up, but I thrive in chaos.
If anything, it keeps the bad thoughts away because I can't think it all because I'm so freaking busy. No, it is good to be back in the swing of it and to have you back
Yeah.
you know, as obnoxious at 100% as you are.
Well, and we're hoping the next episode we can finally drop the bomb that we've been working on for 8 months.
We've been teasing for quite a bit. It's a slow process, but it's very much worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Cool.
Until next time.
Yep. Anybody out there, again, suffering, struggling, going through mental illness or battling anything, man, my fucking phone is always on. I don't care what time of the day it is, what time of the morning it is. Give me a call, shoot me a text. I will respond.